We've got more breaking news, this time in college football, where Oklahoma State has fired longtime head coach Mike Gundy. That's been confirmed by our Matt Zenitz. 56-year-old leaves his alma mater, the program's all-time winningest coach, 170 wins over 21 seasons. But things have soured recently for him and his program. Cowboys winning just 3 games a year ago. They've lost 11 straight games against FBS competition, including Saturday's embarrassing loss to Tulsa. And they haven't won a big game in the Big 12 since 2023. All right, we've got Brad Crawford to break this down. And if you've been following the game and you've been hearing the rumors here for a little bit, doesn't come as surprising, but just give me your thoughts of what we're learning today.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. Third Power 4 coach fired this season. I am a little surprised, Tommy, that it happened on a Tuesday of game week with a Big 12 conference game looming this weekend. But that said, 11 losses in his last 12 coaching appearances for Mike Gundy. He's been there 2 decades, the elder statesman of the Big 12 in Stillwater for the Cowboys. But he hasn't gotten it done the last couple of years. 3-9 last season. Just took a 66-point loss on the chin at Oregon 2 weeks ago. And then to come home last week as a double-digit favorite and lose to Tulsa, you just knew that was going to be it for Mike Gundy.
Look, he's been a good coach for a long time, especially at this program where he's got, 3 Big 12 Coach of the Year honors. He did have that one conference title. You mentioned the Oregon game, and I just go back to his comments when it comes to NIL and the spending and the disparity that he and Dan Lanning had going into that game. Does he just fall into this bucket, Brad, of coaches that have had to adapt to this new landscape of college football and up to this point have not been able to get to that bar?
Definitely so. We saw Washington State's head coach say over the weekend that he wishes he had the resources that his rival Washington had. He later apologized for that, but Mike Gundy said a couple weeks ago before that road loss to Oregon, he doesn't have the money. This program does not have the talent and did not reload this offseason the way Dan Lanning and the Nike-led Oregon program did. So he was almost setting himself up for those power boosters as maybe excuses a bit for a big-time loss. I don't think anybody saw a 66-point loss coming, but it got ugly for the Cowboys quickly in that game. In just the last year and a half or so, Oklahoma State has not come out prepared in a lot of these big games. They did beat UT Martin to open the season. I think most Power 4 programs would just by showing up. But you see there, it's not going to get any easier for this team, even without Mike Gundy the rest of the way. Still got to play Texas Tech. Oklahoma State's not going to be a bowl-eligible team this offseason. I do think making this call now, Tommy, in September, they kind of get ahead of some other jobs that could be opening among the rest of the Power 4 programs, and now UCLA, Virginia Tech, and Oklahoma State vacant.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, and I'll get you out of here on this. How attractive is the Oklahoma State job right now?
I would put it number 2 behind Virginia Tech and just ahead of UCLA. UCLA has mega NIL issues. They're always playing second fiddle to USC out in Los Angeles. Oklahoma State can get back to being a Big 12 contender with a new head coach. They've got to hire the right guy. Probably got to be a young hot shot from the G5, somebody who's going to stick around in Stillwater the way Mike Gundy did, who kind of built that program into being nationally relevant like it is today.
Okay, well, that's breaking news there out of college football, Brad. Certainly appreciate it. Again, changes in Stillwater for this Cowboys team. Certainly will be talked about in the next edition of the College Football Insider. Scan the QR code and make sure you're following them ASAP. And speaking of the Insiders, we'll bring in Brandon Marcello to talk about the news that Mike Gundy no longer head coach of Oklahoma State. We continue to follow breaking news at HQ, where Oklahoma State has fired longtime head coach Mike Gundy. It's been confirmed by our Matt Zenitz. 58-year-old leaves his alma mater as the program's all-time winningest coach. 170 wins north of 2 decades. But things have gone sour recently for the Cowboys, just winning 3 games a year ago, 11 straight losses against FBS competition, and they haven't won a league game since 2023. All right, we're bringing a couple of our guys, Shehan Jeyarajah and Brandon Marcello, to talk about the Mike Gundy news. And Brandon, I'm going to give you first word. Initial thoughts of what we're learning today.
Yeah, I was there Friday night in Stillwater during the loss, and it was clear then that it was over. There's just been a very discombobulated mess with the administration there. It was a matter of time before they all got on the same page and made this decision to move on. This has just been something that's been a long time coming since last season. They've lost 11 straight FBS games, and you've got a head coach in Mike Gundy who has refused to change his ways in a lot of ways. And as a result, he's had to kind of quickly try to catch up the last 2 years through the transfer portal. They had over 60 new players on the roster this season, including 40 plus from the transfer portal. And the problem is that those additions from the transfer portal are not great players. They're just good to average players. And when you throw that all in the mix, on top of a base, a foundation last year, they only won 3 games, you get this disaster you're seeing now in Stillwater. And it was very clear there that night that we were watching the end of the Mike Gundy era.
Shehan, what do you have to add in terms of what's happening on campus right now?
Well, Brendan and I got a chance to talk to Coach Gundy over the offseason, and it was really striking, honestly, just, I guess, how behind he was. He acknowledged we have 65 new players, 30 of them won't even arrive until the summer, and so this was just a roster that not even the staff on campus necessarily knew what to do with. When you fall so far behind, especially in this era of NIL, the transfer portal, it's never been harder to dig your way out, and through the first couple games of the year, it's been miserable. There's kind of an old adage that whenever you don't expect a Mike Gundy team to be good, that's when they strike. Well, they've never come off of a 3-9 season before under Mike Gundy. They've never had to flip this much of their roster. And I know that both of us have talked to people who have said, we were a little surprised about the quality of players that they were going after in the transfer portal. They weren't going after guys who normally would have been starting at the power conference level. So ultimately, they've just dug themselves too big a hole. And when you have the kind of losses that you've had through the first couple of weeks, a 69-3 loss to Oregon, and then a loss, of course, to Tulsa just this past week for the first time at home since 1951, it's just hard to keep this thing going.
Let's get to something that Brandon had mentioned, and I also brought up with Brad Crawford last segment, guys, and it's sort of like these tenured coaches, if you will, dealing with what we see in the new college football landscape over the last handful of years. Brandon, has there been sort of Mike Gundy and some other coaches the ability or inability to adapt to the times? Is there sort of a common theme? Is it like learning a new language? Is it purely financial driven? You guys are out there. You tell me.
I think it's just coaches who are resisting change and then try to change when it's too late. You saw it with Mike Gundy. He's fired. You're seeing it currently in process in real time with Dabo Swinney at Clemson. I think for the last 3 to 4 years, you've had people like myself and many others writing at, why is Dabo Swinney taking so long to fill some very noticeable holes or places where they can upgrade in talent by going to the transfer portal? And they just resisted that for so long. Here in the last year or two, they've started warming up to the idea, but even so, there isn't like they're adding 20 new guys every year, which is about the average across the FBS. And now Clemson's off to their worst start ever under Dabo Swinney at 1-3. With Mike Gundy, it was a similar situation. Oklahoma State, yes, had some money issues. He says, Mike Gundy, that they had $7 million spread out over the last 3 transfer portal classes. But Oklahoma State does have a very deep core of boosters. There's not a big guy there anymore since the passing of T. Boone Pickens, but there is support there, and Mike Gundy just chose to not dip into that well early enough, and now they're playing catch-up. And whoever the next head coach is going to be playing catch-up as well, unless this administration, which, by the way, the athletics director there, Chad Weiberg, has been working without a contract since June. We don't even know what the administration is going to look like. We don't know who's going to hire him. And so Oklahoma State, if they want to attract good coaches there and an already program that a lot of people would have hesitation to join, they need to do what Virginia Tech is doing right now as they look for a new coach, where they're going to put in $50 to $70 million extra dollars into their athletics department to help fund things. Oklahoma State needs an influx of cash to attract some new candidates here, some fresh blood that'll be able to attract talent to Stillwater, because it's a very difficult place to recruit. It's a very difficult place to make them go through the transfer portal when other big programs in the Big 12 are going after them. They need, obviously, a fresh start here, but they also need a new approach when it comes to NIL and their entire administration.
Shehan, how attractive is this Oklahoma State job, and what type of head coach would be a good fit in your eyes?
Well, I really want to echo what Brandon said, which is that it's not just the fact that this program doesn't have resource. They just haven't deployed it under Mike Gundy by choice in many cases. You know, again, $7 million in NIL over the last 3 years is horrendous, no matter what program you are. Mike Gundy himself made $7 million a year over the past couple of years. They have more than $7 million over 3 years available to them. And this year was the first year where you started to see them start to spend out. And so I think that there's still a lot of interest and opportunity in this kind of job. This is not 2005 anymore. Oklahoma State has built itself up, whether it be from a facility perspective, a resource perspective, a credibility perspective. And while, yes, obviously it's a little bit isolated, you have great access to the state of Texas, to DFW. And so I think that when you're making your next hire, that's where you should be looking. You should look for somebody who's able to build on some of those pathways in a modernized way. A guy who really comes to mind to me is G.J. Kinney, the head coach right now at Texas State. He's a young up-and-comer, former Tulsa player, has a lot of familiarity with the region, but he also has, at Texas State, built up a really competitive program. This was a Texas State program that hadn't made a single bowl game at the FBS level before G.J. Kinney came here, and now they have a chance to maybe be competitive for the New Year's Six spot, or rather, the expanded playoff spot from the group of six. Another coach that may come to mind that's going to be very popular among Oklahoma State people is Zach Robinson, the former quarterback at Oklahoma State under Mike Gundy, now the offensive coordinator with the Atlanta Falcons. He, of course, coached under Sean McVay for many years with the Los Angeles Rams, and McVay assistants are very hot. So they feel like he's somebody who potentially could come in, be a fresh new perspective with some schematic brilliance, but also somebody who really understands this place. So there's going to be a lot of options, I think. I think this will be a very attractive opening with the potential to compete both in the Big 12 and for national recognition. And I expect that, like Brandon said, you're going to have a reckoning of sorts at Oklahoma State where they're going to decide, are we going to be serious about this and invest at a high level? And I think the answer will be yes.
One more. Yeah, let me add here real quick. Yeah, the sources I've spoken to, Zach Robinson is going to get pushed quite a bit for this job, the Atlanta Falcons offensive coordinator, who Shehan just mentioned. Even there Friday night when I was talking to some higher-up folks, he's going to get a lot of support. I also think that he's very much going to get an interview and is someone that is going to be pushed quite a bit by some really prominent voices there to get serious consideration. But again, the situation to take in consideration here is that the administration's an upheaval. We're very much expecting potentially a change among the athletics administration, starting with Chad Weiberg, the athletics director. Oklahoma State also has a relatively new president there who was hired back in April. But all the prominent voices there, the name that kept coming up Friday night as they were discussing replacements, even though Mike Gundy was still the coach, but they knew the end was there, was Zach Robinson. So keep an eye on him.
Great stuff, guys. I know you guys are going to be talking about on the Insiders podcast. Brandon, Marcello, Shehan Jeyarajah, gentlemen, thank you for joining us here on the Breaking News. Also, the Cover 3 podcast will also have you covered as well. Chip, Danny, Tom, and Bud. Scan the QR code. Also, make sure you're following them.